Belize, another day is here. Wake up, Belize, we gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize, everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize, voice our opinion and place your calling. WB, be yourself, see yourself, this is a show my people. Belize our hopes up to needless reason. Nobody feel left out, is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes, WB. And all the things that will happen under God blue skies. I know we make people get victimized. Let's work together for better, we got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize, another day is here. Wake up, Belize, we gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize, everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize, voice our opinion and place your calling. WB, get up, make every day count, don't waste it, people. Do your part, play a role, get where you need to. You can tune in from work or in your vehicle. If you got a problem, pick up the phone. Why wait till time calling?
And welcome to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes for this Tuesday morning, April 1st, 2025, from back at the zinc fence at 3304 Mandela Drive, Suites outside Belize City. It's Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. Time is community time this morning. I'm Sister YaYa, Marin, Coleman, sitting in for Brother Most Hyde, and give thanks to Wake Up. Well, the one we will wake up with a move. We have a lot to give thanks for. We'll be together until 9 o'clock this morning. You could join us on XTV, Facebook at XTV Belize, YouTube XTV Belize. We're also simulcasting on Creme Radio. The usual lineup, after we give thanks and level up, we have the National Meteorological Service of Belize weather forecast, and this morning the forecaster is Michelle Augustine, and then we'll go right into the first news brief of the day, and that is being brought to us by XTV Newsroom under the leadership of our sister, dynamic journalist Maricela Maya. So, make you hear what the weather and be like, other than breeze the blow, kind of kite season.
Good morning. A moderate east to southeasterly airflow will continue to support fair, warm, and mostly dry weather conditions. The forecast is for sunny skies with cloudy spells today and isolated showers, if any. Tonight, skies will be partly cloudy with little or no rainfall. High temperatures will peak at around 87 Fahrenheit along the coast, 95 Fahrenheit inland, and 82 Fahrenheit up in the hills. Overnight temperatures will be about 81 Fahrenheit over the coast, 74 Fahrenheit inland, and 66 Fahrenheit up in the hills. Winds will blow from the east to southeast at 10 to 20 knots, producing moderate sea conditions. We are currently experiencing a low tide, and high tide will be at 11:31 later this morning. The moon will rise at 11 minutes after 8 this morning, and sunset will be at 5 minutes after 6 this evening. In the outlook for Wednesday and Wednesday night, fair, windy, and warm conditions with little to no rain can be expected. And that concludes this morning's weather forecast produced at the National Meteorological Service. For more information, you can log on to our website at nms.gov.belize.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. Creme FM presents informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news. The first private radio in Belize since 1989. Creme FM presents the news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news.
There are reports that on Friday, CEO in the Ministry of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries, Sharalee Carr, wrote a letter to Chester Williams that he should simply function as a caretaker in his post as Commissioner of Police during his transition. On Monday, Williams responded to the reports, stating that the CEO has no such authority.
I will only say that the CEO has no authority to write such letter. I have not seen it, but if that is so, she has no authority. My appointment comes from the Governor General, and so only the Governor General can alter the terms of my my authority as Commissioner of Police or the Prime Minister. So that is all I'm going to say in respect of that.
While last week there were reports that the Compol had asked for a 2 to 3 month transition period to take on his new role as CEO in the Ministry of Transport, Indigenous, Constitution, and Religious Affairs. Yesterday, Williams said he is excited about his new role and has asked for the transition to be made, quote, as quick as possible, end quote.
In terms of my timeline, I have advised the Cabinet Secretary that I want to leave as quick as possible. It's a matter of the Cabinet Secretary and the Prime Minister working out my exit package, and once that is done, then I am prepared to leave. I am excited about going to take over my new role. I believe that it is going to be something good for me. It's a new opportunity for me to be able to go and apply myself with a view to see how I can continue to contribute to the safety of this country. So.
Early Monday morning, San Pedro police discovered a grenade in an abandoned building in the northern part of Ambergris Caye. Commissioner of Police Chester Williams told the media that the grenade was secured and would be destroyed.
This morning, sometime after 8 a.m., a team of officers from San Pedro conducted search in an abandoned building situated north of Ambergris Caye. The search led to the discovery of a grenade, a hand grenade, inside one of the rooms. That grenade is currently at a secure location. BDF bomb expert has been contacted and should be in San Pedro anytime now to examine the grenade and to destroy it in San Pedro.
High Court Justice Tawanda Hondura has reserved his judgment in case 661 of 2024 to decide whether the Alliance for Democracy's Unity Convention of October 2024 was lawful and whether the expulsion of Tracy Panton et al. By the Moses Shineborough executive followed the Constitution of the United Democratic Party. The trial lasted 4 hours and unfolded in the presence of a full court. In attendance was claimant Moses Shineborough and defendants Tracy Panton and Philippa Griffith Bailey. While Barrow showed up alone with his counsel, Dr. Christopher Malcolm, Panton had a full court of supporters, along with officials including her second deputy leader, Beverly Williams, sorry, Chang, and UDP senators designates Patrick Farber and Sheena Pitts. And the other claimants, Hugo Pat, Sherry Medina, Michael Perfy, and Alberta August, did not show up for the in-person hearing. In Pat's case, however, to notify he was withdrawing his claim. And Dr. Malcolm opened submissions arguing that the process of holding a convention is not ceremonial, it is substantive, and that Panton did not have the authority to issue a call for a national convention, as that is a role filled by the Secretary General. He therefore pointed to breaches of the Constitution and rules that should render the convention null and void. In response, King's Counsel Peter Knox stated that once the petition with the required numbers was submitted, it was mandatory to hold a convention to fulfill the rights of the delegates. Responding on the point that the AFD had someone usurp the role of the chairman Knox said no one can block or frustrate the will of the delegates. And so when neither Chairman Michael Perfeet nor his deputy, Alberto August, showed up at the convention, someone else had to be put in his place to have the convention proceed. On the point that the Secretary General was a gatekeeper who vetted who could vote, Knox argued that because she was part of the camp trying to prevent a national convention, she would not have honored her role, but the Constitution does not provide for who can fulfill the duties if the Secretary General doesn't do so.
The chairman, in this case, simply refused to give effect to the delegates' requisition. The question would be, we say, in those circumstances, the members, or someone on behalf of the members, like Mrs. Panton, can essentially take up the cudgels on their behalf and call the convention. The other side's case is essentially, no, they can't just call the convention. Perhaps they can go to court to try to get some relief from the court, to which we say no. You don't have to waste time going to court to assert your rights. You can assert your rights in the normal way, as long as you do so peacefully.
You also consider that Ms. Bedina was contributing to the frustration of having a national convention?
Well, we don't say that she herself did anything, but what we do say is she was firmly in the camp of those who were refusing to do anything. I mean, and indeed, she is one of the claimants in this case. And I think it's pretty unrealistic for myself to say that, and what our submission was, that if we had asked her to send out the relevant messages and documents and things, we say the chances of her actually doing that are nil, because she was part of the camp which was not even recognising the validity of the convention. On the point about whether Mrs. Panton was entitled to call the convention, our point is simply the Constitution doesn't say one way or the other whether she could or couldn't, and therefore she could. Nothing prevented her from doing so.
When it comes to the right of the delegates, your argument is that they have a right to vote, and that right cannot be taken away from them.
Our basic point is being a delegate's a very important job. If you are a delegate, it must follow that rights given to you by the Constitution must be upheld. They're serious rights, and that is because the structure of the Constitution is what I said was a bottom-up Constitution. It starts at constituency level, and it's the constituents, and in particular the delegates of the constituents, who are a fundamental part of the party. That is why we say they are given these powerful rights to call for a national convention, regardless of what National Party Council might say, or regardless of what the Central Executive Committee says, or the chairman. These are absolute rights. And that's why, if they were being dishonoured, it followed that Mrs. Panton was entitled to see to it that they were given effect to. That was the argument. The question then arises, how do you construe the Constitution in that position, which is a position which is not provided for expressly by the Constitution?
Barrow insists that pending the outcome of the case, the Hugo Pat interim leadership is the rightful one, and that Pat had no authority to delegate leadership to Panton. We asked Barrow and Knox if the case is now merely an academic exercise given how the general election turned out.
I don't know what standing you still retain. I'm sure you...
member of the Central Executive as former leader, previous former leader.
Okay, but so what are we...
And so that is
the final objective here?
That is the problem. We have a few objectives. For those of us that would want to be Prime Minister of this country one day, or to sit in cabinet, or even to sit in the National Assembly, we have to demonstrate to the public that we adhere to the rule of law and that we will be compliant with whatever oath of office it is that we take. That is number one. Number two, I demonstrated that when the former party chairman, Michael Perfeet, when he disagreed with my interpretation, because you interviewed me and you said to me straight out, why don't you hand over to Ugo? And one of the reasons I didn't want to hand over to Ugo, because I was afraid that the process would not be seen through and we would end up right back at square one. However, once the party chairman as the authority in the party, the ultimate authority in the party, barring the NPC and the National Convention, disagreed with my position that, I continued to be leader until another leader was elected, I yielded to the party chairman, right? However, it was my hope, because I spoke to the party chairman, and he had mentioned that he spoke to Ugo, and Ugo understands that, he has to maintain the interim leadership until another national convention is called. But what proceeded was Ms. Pantan saying, "Shai never need to resign. We resign here October 20th," maintaining that she and her cabal are the central executive and the duly elected leaders, which I reject, Alberta August reject, Shari Medina reject, a majority of us reject. So nothing was solved by my resignation. And that is why we have to continue with court.
Your ideal outcome from this is to finally prove and establish that October 20th shouldn't have been, and
that is a serious decision.
But
there are
really,
damages. No, there are significant damages to be had for that, which costs many of my colleagues to lose their seat, costs me to lose my seat, in my opinion. There are valid arguments to be made, and for the sake of democracy.
Well, I think in one sense they are a little bit moot, because, as I understand it, Mrs. Panton is the leader of the opposition. In practical terms, I imagine, she would say that she is, to all intents and purposes, the leader of the UDP. Right. So what's the point of this litigation? One of the questions is, or rather was, who is the leader of the UDP? There was an issue about that until the general election, but in real life there's now no issue about that particular point at all. Of course, there is still the question of costs. It might be said, well, that's still an outstanding issue. But it's not really the main issue which this litigation was, as it were, came into effect to consider. But I think it is. And I think there is something to be said for the point that the question of who was the leader is academic, because we all now know who is the leader.
In respect of the second matter of expulsion being argued, Knox pointed to the UDP constitution not being followed, and therefore he says the principles of natural justice were violated. The argument is that Panton, Beverly Williams, Patrick Farber, and John Saldivar were never told of the charges against them or given an opportunity to defend themselves. Farber explained.
Somebody would have had to put something in writing, and we all know that this came because we were very outspoken about the injustices that we felt were happening within the party structure. And so somebody would have had to put pen to paper and make a complaint to the central executive. The central executive would then need to determine whether this was something valid, send it to the ethics committee, and then the ethics committee go through the process, which, by the way, is where due process and natural justice comes into play. You cannot expel somebody without giving them a chance to speak up for themselves. And then, of course, there is the right to appeal, even after the ethics committee pronounces you as expelled or suspended or whatever other penalty it can met out. You have a right then to appeal to the NPC, which was never afforded to us. So that is how you know, again, that the process was flawed.
And that's the end of this morning's news brief. You could tune in for news throughout the day from Creme Radio. Immediately after WB, there'll be the morning stew until 12 o'clock. At 12:30, there's a full news package. At 3 o'clock, there's a news brief. And at 5:15, there's a full news package on Creme Radio. At 6 o'clock here at XTV, there's a full news package, and that's Monday through Friday. And remember, you can stay tuned at Facebook, XTV Belize, YouTube, XTV Belize. Quick break. When we come back, it's for We Time, Community Conversations.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. The news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports.
Yes. Welcome back to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes for this morning, Tuesday, April 1st. I know children still play All Fools Day, but as a child, that I mean one thing. Especially if we catch adults, just make sure you stay far, because you might get on stray away, like if you get them really good. And I feel that way, you're conscious of April 1st, and so I'm like, I'd on my guard. But some people who got some good WUB for you, you get caught up, you forget the April 1st, and then catch your good. So, yeah, I don't know if people still do that. The phone number is 280-5848, 280-5848. Call, share, whatever you want to share about. Positive vibrations concerning your community. Something what happened where you never make local news. Whatever you don't want to talk about. And especially the Belizean diaspora. One of my sisters from the East Coast texts. Respects this. So you could call upon WhatsApp. Putting up on the speaker, on the mic, I should say. My number is 671-8050. If anybody from the Caribbean diaspora want to call upon WhatsApp, I'm putting on, we are making a way for make sure we're inclusive, for get the voices of our people heard, centered, and recognized. And so, truthfully, I sleepy. It's a one of the morning where Adam just want to stay in my bed longer. And so you really take one extra effort for show up and put your TV face on. I needed to call in this morning. We did good yesterday, so to call in today. This morning is also the morning when I need more sleep, when I do my protest. On behalf of UBAD Educational Foundation, and UBAD Educational Foundation is the fourth pillar of Zinc Fence. So I guess somebody would have said we deal with the social component of Zinc Fence. The organization is called UBAD because our parent organization was UBAD, and then the Educational Foundation with an emphasis on raising awareness through community actions for the liberation of African descendants racialized as Black people. I mean, we're near United Black Association for Development, Educational Foundation for a reason. And so it's day number, I mean to say I'm going to stop right down my numbers after March. Anyway, that today day 210 of me calling in most times weekly to this morning talk show to bring awareness, share knowledge, share UEF's progress as it relates to holding the government of Belize accountable to stop hair discrimination in this country. Morning, thanks for call. How your morning to go? Morning, X. I know.
Not worry.
I really have a good constitution, but it mattered to me that my brother would have called and check. Thanks for call and check for me. I don't know if I'm in a choke. I don't know if that's spring allergies. I don't know what, but I feel good. I just.
I hear some news thing.
Yeah, I'm in the struggle there a minute.
It's like spring, no?
Yeah, it could be that. It could very well be that. What's going on in your world?
I can't because on the show you had Akko.
Yes.
He's very good.
Yes.
Michael Rose is also very good, but it's a little more difficult to hear him. And then you had a European, a lady of European ancestry.
Yes.
I turn down this radio, leave it.
All right.
Hold on a second.
All right, we have Brother Evan X. Hyde on the...
You like make publicity, man. Listen
of course, you know you don't say yourself, show yourself, be yourself. This is the space for it.
So, I know you that somebody where suspicious European people. And in fact, sometimes actually hostile. So you ask her, well, what she do? You know, this record it in her ass gallop. And so she explained that her parents were communists. No. One of my friends in the United States sent me a screenshot of the Rockville Declaration. I suspect that you are left-leaning, you know? But you also are very much black nationalist. I'm not trying to pinpoint you. I just say, start wrong, right? Because when we talk about, you know, I'm a fantastic card from Pulu, because he's a source of information from the streets of the South Side, right? And this was a day, I think it must have been, but that was yesterday. When did the young man drown in the Cebu?
Over the weekend.
I saw a picture of the young man sent by the principal to the television station. We know EP York has emerged as a bastion of excellence where high school, the education is concerned. And the picture was so impressive of the young black man, right? As opposed to the photographs of our youth who are normally on the media for criminal activities and so on. Now, it being the case that you're struggling for callers, I know I rush myself. I want to interrupt me at any point because, for instance, I'm not sure if you've read the classic by Harold Cruz, The Crisis of the Black Intellectual.
No, I have not.
YaYa.
I can't read everything, X, but I make a note.
Yeah, it's a classic. And then there is a response from the Caribbean. I have that book in my collection here. I have to look for it and maybe another time see, because you see what happened, YaYa. We know that Marcus Garvey was the most sensational black activist of the 20th century, just about, right? My understanding of Garvey was that he was very supportive of the approach of Booker T. Washington. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, there was a continuing, I don't want to call it dispute, but back and forth between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. This was the time of what they call in the United States Jim Crow. And the white South was getting away with a lot of violence against black people, including a bunch of lynchings, right? Now, Booker T's approach was to stress the acquiring of black people of practical tools, industrial skills, stuff like that. He felt that it wouldn't profit black people to agitate politically against the white power structure. You see?
Yes.
So, as young persons, we in college in the 60s tended to think of Booker T as Uncle Thomas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas W.B. Du Bois, a graduate of Harvard, I think, brilliant black man, he was one of the leaders of the NAACP, and the NAACP was stressing political organization and challenging the racist laws and power structure in America in the early 20th century. Garvey comes to New York around 1950, 1916, 1917, whatever. He was doing a lot of traveling because he came to Belize.
Yes.
But Garvey was, like I said, he was much closer to Booker T in thinking than to Du Bois. And secondly, the reason I mentioned the Cruz book was because Harlem, this cultural center of black America, was in a lot of ferment in the 1920s when Garvey was at the peak of his power. To understand that ferment, you have to appreciate the fact that the Russian Revolution in 1917 had an effect on working classes all over the world. And you had, because essentially ever since then, we're speaking, this is not a classroom, we're just giving a rough outline of history here. Ever since then, amongst black thinkers or activists, there's the black nationalists, and then there are people who are Marxist, Leninists, or communists who emphasize the class struggle. You remember that issue came up in your show on Sunday.
Yes.
Now, when UBAD began, it was right after the left-wing activists in Belize had demonstrated against the Vietnam War. I was invited along with them because I shared many of their views. This was a movement led by Assad Schuman and Said Musa, Palestinian activists who were attorneys trained in England, no?
Yes.
The first night I demonstrated, a man came up to me named Robert Livingston. He had been to Jamaica for medical treatment for bad.
What's going on? I don't hear you. X. Oh, the phone cut off. We had Evan X Hyde on the line sharing some oral history as it relates to Belize, the Caribbean, the United States, Europe, and the connection between what we call black nationalists and Marxist, Leninist, left-leaning people. And so we don't usually get the opportunities here. And so I don't know what's going on. The call still is showing up on the line, but I don't know what happened. And just hang up, and then I know you'll call back. Yes, so he was making the reference to, on Sunday Review, I have a new co-host since the year started, Brother Ako Matota. He is from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and an original, one of the actors from Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to the Black Power movement. I'm thankful I met him and his partner, Sister Fanta Matota. My life has changed in knowing them since the short time I've known them. I tell people, Brother, I could tell about people where I read about. And it's really his contribution to Sunday Review, which is the only news review talk show in Belize, as it relates to this year, is the need to focus on the Caribbean. The majority of the Caribbean population are African descendants, racialized as Black people, because of the kidnapping, forced migration, free labor source to sustain primarily global north countries that are considered first world countries, developed countries. On the backs of still working class people with the capitalist system that, at least in the Western Hemisphere, that we live on. So within that context, we had a brother, Michael LaRose. His father, they're from Trinidad and Tobago, John LaRose, was active in the oil field workers trade union, had to leave Trinidad and Tobago, lived in London, and started the first bookstore, Black bookstore and publishing house known as New Beacon Books. His father and his mother and the woman his father eventually paired up with all transitioned. And so he still, with support from the community, leads New Beacon Book, which is, the tag is more than a bookstore. I've visited twice. The place feels airy. So anyways, he edited a book by an elder who's like 91 years old. His name is Anselm Samuel. They call him Sam. But the X.
I'm going to call you from my landline. That I feel like.
I'm not here as clearly. Do you need to talk up a little louder?
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, better. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to call upon the landline. Because I feel like, you see, you have, well, and you don't say you have to understand, but what people don't understand is that you have international people who are involved with the telecommunications because then the Eastern office, because you know the America is the most powerful country in the region, and hello?
I hear you. Go ahead.
They're concerned about what they call terrorists, no? So they have people where, you know, maybe actually in control of the telecommunications. So you have chatter out there from people who are troublemakers, right? Well, when I'm young, I used to make trouble.
Oh, you start getting trouble?
Well, you must go see that.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. You're a lead troublemaker.
The trouble where you give, probably some might get blamed on me.
So I can't get trouble by myself. I need a man to support me for make the trouble share. I can't do it by myself. They always X to give me order, true?
Yeah, always X. And you're going far behind me because that show me international Sunday.
Yes, and they're not often that I get, the same thing had happened the Sunday before with the female from Guyana, who's a part of the Guyanese Haitian support group, whose father was Russian, remember?
Well, I don't remember.
Yeah, she was Russian, and she's a European, she's mixed, but she presents as European. And her father was...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So same with two Europeans.
That whole mix and thing brings up the question, how race is, how it works in the Caribbean as opposed to the United States. In the United States, if you're not black, you're white. If you're not white, you're black. So no matter how light skinned you are, if you have, they say, one drop of African blood, you're black.
Right.
But in the Caribbean, if you have enough light skin, then you go middle class a question business. You understand what I'm saying? Now, in the 1920s, there's a lot of political activism in Harlem, the cultural capital of Black America. Where I got cut off was, I was telling you, when I was demonstrating along with Schumann and Musa's organization, a man named Livingston came up to me, and he was the secretary of the Belize branch of the UNIA. There was actually a UNIA still existing in Belize in 1969. I was very much a black activist, follower of Malcolm and Stokely, but I didn't. This was inside that UNIA there. You had famous personalities like nurses Vivian C. and Cleopatra White, and the person who is your heroine, Elfrida Reyes.
But there's a difference between the two women.
Between who?
There's a big difference between those two women because Elfrida stay with the people on the ground.
I don't want to trip off.
Oh, I have to make one distinction between them.
If you want to take over the conversation,
you tell me I could interrupt you anytime with a reason or where to go and so far. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
All right. I take it back. Apologies, sister. Anyhow, Livingston says, stop fooling with them people here. Corner Liberty Hall on lecture. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, you bad farm. 3 or 4 weeks a lecture. But that story, I have to republish that, you know. In any case, when we start UBAD, it caught Schumann and Musa off guard. And they quickly joined UBAD. And after about maybe for argument's sake, 6 or 8 weeks, they came to us and they said, listen, you guys have a cultural movement and we want to go more political. So we want to form our own organization and have you cooperate with us. That's when they formed PAC, the People's Action Committee. And we remain with you guys. This should be about, say, May 1969. In September of 1969, half the UBAD executive went back to the States. And one of our strong activists, Odinga Lumumba, went back to London. So I was just a young guy then. At that time, I would be 69, I'd be 21, I think.
21?
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, 22. Yeah, because I was born in 47. So I kind of felt like, hey, I'm hamstrung here. I have to make an alliance with PAC. But UBAD was what it was. It was like Marcus. I was a little bit. I kept a distance from this Marxist Leninist business. My thinking was, these people are Christians. It's communism, that atheistic ideology, and these people, they want to hear about God. They come in, they say no God, and they want big up anyhow. We formed the alliance in say October of 69, but by January of 70, it broke up because UBAD had lost its flavor with the coalition once that alliance was made. And we went our separate ways after that. But the point of all this is that there is always, I think it was probably Brother Akko who had been a part of NJAC in Trinidad. Hello?
Yes, he was.
In the 1970 revolution, that was, we were so separated from each other in the Caribbean, but that very important activist movement in Trinidad, which involved the army, and a man by the name of Rafiq Shah, who was actually an Indian. So that was you must ask Brother Akko about Rafiq Shah.
Okay, I will.
Because those guys were tried for treason. Probably Rex LaSalle was a black army officer in Trinidad. So he and Shah, I think, were tried together. It's a long time ago, right? But the point of all this is that Brother Akko mentioned that he was kind of a black nationalist and was kind of hostile to those who wanted to talk about the class struggle. But now he appreciates and needs to look at the class struggle. Never say join that thing. You know what I'm saying? So we're going out to Belize and try to wrap the because I give only jump start. In Belize, we don't have any really black activists except you, and what you've done is regionalize and internationalize the struggle. But we have the black bourgeoisie, the people that some of us used to refer way back when as Afro-Saxons, or what Franz Fanon called black skin, white mass. So we had 3 administrations which were majority black. Do you remember that? Can we see where, when Pulu called and explained the tragedy inside the black, what there is of black education for the kids, right? And the whole sociological picture and so on and so forth. You say, well, but we were in power for 13 years. What was done to address our peculiar situation? Because our ancestors were brought here as slaves from Africa to cut mahogany for a multinational called BC. When they didn't plant back the trees, when the trees started to run out, we had a thriving community back there in the 50s. But for whatever the reasons, our people didn't go agricultural as they should have. And a lot of them went to the States, and a lot of them became attorneys. And in the year 2025, our situation is what it is. So that when we see a photograph of a young, tragic kid in Stewart, he is such an exception to the rule. Why is that? These are questions that need to be discussed. I just try to help build the show because there with maybe some allergies, kill the time for you, but you know, pull know that thing.
Yeah. You helped me big time for sure this morning, and I really appreciate your stretch talking Panda link. Because even though Brother Akko and they had that reasoning, I still want me to think about Asar and Said and Yubad at the time, and I really have to be more intentional for make the links within the top about what happening in the Caribbean. Similar links happening.
I always tell you about, but I had 2 copies of the book by Kate Quinn.
You have 2 copies?
I had.
One for me?
I know I give somebody one and last the next one, but yeah, that's easily available on the internet. It's by Kate Quinn.
I like my book. I like hardcover. I like my book in my hand. But you made some very good points. You may go towards Rockfield Declaration, but you never finished on that. But that I may a joint.
But that was mostly a PAC initiative because that was a direct challenge to the capitalist system as it existed in Belize. Now on the international scene, what happened? Look, Russia had its communist revolution in 1917. China had its communist revolution in 1949. In 1989, into the early 1990s, communism saw a collapse in Russia and a class of oligarchs was produced, led by Yeltsin and stuff like that. That's not my area of expertise, but what Putin is running in Russia today is not a workers' revolution. And China is what some scholars call state communism. So it's like, as contradictory as the description is, it's capitalist communism. Because the big companies still, so the world today, I'm not, they definitely Said moved to the right and became prime minister. Said went to live in Cuba, is an activist, intellectual, and so on and so forth. But insofar as UBAD, well, we left that in the hands of YaYa, Marin, Coleman, and he starts sneeze. So I said I had to help him.
And the community support. Couldn't do this without community, brother. You know the always about the people.
God bless.
One love, brother.
One love.
Evan excited. The Evan excited. Save me this morning. So the rest of us don't have to keep calm. We have to go to a break. It's 2 cents come time, brought to us by Fort Point Security. back to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. The phone number to call is 280-5848. I'm going to call and talk about whatever I want to talk about. Of course, I have to give thanks to my tea this morning. Kim Grab and Go on Mahogany Street, delivered by my brother, Keller. And today is their son's Earth Day. Malik is 23 years old today. Malik Leslie, he's an educator at Nazarene High School, alma mater. Imagine that, right? You graduate from the school and you go back to teach there. Big respect, Malik. Tomorrow, then Data birthday, one born April 1st, one born April 2nd. But I know I get in by Data. Today was the Malik Day, so we are focused on Malik. Tomorrow, we are focused on your Data birthday. So, happy birthday for the Malik. Both students wish Malik happy 23rd Earth Day today. His parents are Kim and Keller from Kim Grab and Go on Mahogany Street. I know my other brother must be out there right now in that wheelchair. Southman. I mean, people's there. Lots of community love at that particular location. They nurture me in so many ways. So, what I want to talk about this morning, Belizean people. Of course, I'm going to share that UEF today, that on Protest Day, holding the government of Belize accountable as it relates to hair discrimination in schools and in places of employment in the public and the private sector. So I get off at WEB 9, so I guess at least by 9:45, I should be in front of the Ministry of Education headquarters on North Front Street until 12 o'clock. Just on a walk up and down with my sign. Was the government of Belize stop hair discrimination. Yesterday, UEF looked for allies. And so yesterday we had a very productive meeting with we got a comment from, I tell you, I just fortunate to have some really amazing soul sisters. And one of them lived at the United States, Sonia Allen. Okay then, this is the comment where Sister Sonia put on Facebook. Please clarify, especially when light-skinned think or act white, they might be white, different or better. Belize still get into light skin versus dark skin. Unless you are European, you are of color. X had made the point. Indeed, I said to people, because we're all human beings. Let me get that straight. We're all human beings. But because of enslavement, colonization, there is embedded in our institutions, in our people mindset, that if you present as a European, look like one European, racialized as white person, that is better. And it's still very much in a latter way vibration. And so you would have African descendants racialized as black people coming in all shades, shape, hair texture, length of hair, hairstyles. People look different. You have people who present European and identify as an African. I have one of my good sister, African-American sister from Placencia. Her mother is a European woman. Her father is an identifiably African brown-skinned man from Grenada. Her parents at birth intentionally chose to raise her as a black child. Now, when you look upon her, you don't have to say she white or black, because that's what I did when I met her. And so she raised in Harlem, totally identify as a black person, black identity, culture, value system. And she said to me one day, she said, "YaYa, when you talk about black people, somebody will look at me, come on your radar, like, real talk, sister, no." And she said, "You know how difficult that is for people like me? Even though we recognize your privilege because of how we look, we get treated differently, but it's still like that hurt as a black person. So, you know, you don't know, it's like you're in two worlds. And so I try to be sensitive about people when you look upon it, people have a right to identify how they choose. So for people where you have a question mark because they really could choose either identity, that's one different scenario. But people where you could look upon it and say, yeah, you got lucky now. You can't run from it. Because I think it's smart, I run from it, then I run from it. And there were people who passed as white people for their own survival most of the time. But colorism is real. That the prejudice within a group of people, like black people. So I know I talked about this before. It starts off in your home. That if you're the more melanated child or darker child, you know, hear negative thing by yourself and the people in who's supposed to care about you, nurture you, value you, for the most part. That not everybody have their reality today, but for the most part. So that's never my reality. And I tell people that way make me different from a lot of other people. I'm the darkest person of my 3 sisters that my parents had 4 daughters. And I born in England. My papa studied for be surveyor, my mom, my older sister gone. I born them, my younger sister make there, she born in Belize. But when I come back home, and we're talking, this is 1967, so I was about, I think, maybe 14 months old at the time. My mom is a very melanated woman, or I should say was, because she's in the spirit realm now. Our mother, not just my mom, come from Davis Bank. Parents, melanated. My grandpa, parents come from the Caribbean, Jamaica and Barbados. Melanated Davis Bank people. Course 4C here. Black people. My granny, of Indian lineage, grew up the, what they call, I think that Calcutta or Yabra area, from my side. So my point is my mom is very melanated. My pa look like where I call one Spanish man, because my granny from my pa side, who don't want identifiable black woman, had one child with somebody who look, you know, say, of Spanish heritage, and the people in come from Spain. And so my pa look more like a pa. So my dad is birthday will be next month, 85, and for the past few months I've been taking him on his clinic visits and to KHMH. I will never get used to it, right? Because I identify, present, I'm an African woman because that's my reality based on how I was raised, nurtured, how I look, and I hold fast to my African heritage. Now, I'm not denying that I have other DNA in me, I'm not denying that, but that's not how I identify, that's not how that's my value system, that's not how I lead and guide and nurture me. So one time people see me with our dad who look distinctly different from me, you get one number of head turns, and X was making the point that, especially in a place like Belize, you have a lot of mix-up. But you could, in a black community, and adopt one child where, or to raise one child where they're not identifiable with an African child, but that child could have, because again, if you look for my pa, you'd have said, and he tell you one time, my pa born in 1940, as a child growing up, the discrimination he experienced as what they call, at the time it was a derogatory term for call Spanish speakers, paña. And I never tell I in my adult years that because Spain in Spanish is España, and that's what they call that derogative word. But he have that lived experience. So, but, and then he know talk Spanish too. And in my who black, know talk Spanish too. So he said one time he talk to her in Spanish, he answer low, because he don't want nobody in the community here and talk Spanish. Then don't they give her a hard time. Then they're working class, impoverished people. So my granny only son, he in the walk through street, they sell bread and bun, tamales, docono. So, and again, this would be like the 1950s. So the point was, Sister Sonia de make about, because X make the point of, you know, some people, that would be, that for we reality. So I had a long conversation with some people yesterday. And we keep hearing over and over again, when it comes to African descendants racialized as black people, that as the days, weeks, months, years go by, we did a bottom of the barrel. And it just happened, I believe. But then the question is, okay, what we under about it? The point of WUB Educational Foundation being formed by a group of activists in Belize was to look primarily at the education of black youths Southside Belize City. And Polo, based on Polo availability, I might bring her in tomorrow as a Zoom guest. I want to call her, ask her if you're not to listen. So all this is tying into the fact that UEF is protesting because the hair discrimination has been experienced by majority African descendants racialized as black people, but also other students who do not present or identify as black students that Belize. And this is over I think one 12-year period. It's I think maybe 9 news stories, all 6 districts from infant 1 to junior college in Belize. And so this goes back to, one, the disconnection from our African identity, our African selves, where you had African descendants racialized as black people, majority who were born against their will. That is territory we now know as Belize. And then there's a mix-up of people. And at some point, then gone from identifying as African people to Creole people. And the singular European narrative has been, and we bite line, hook, and sinker without no analysis, with all the colonial papered people, with all the ministries and departments who have a responsibility for the research and tell one decolonized story about our people's identity. Now, you have different groups of people in Belize. So if you know, with the African descendants racialized as black people, outside of the, and there are 2 groups in Belize, then call themselves Garifuna and call themselves Creole. Neither of those 2 groups have one, at least for most Belizeans, have one knowledge of the African component that we, because you don't want to be black. You want to be anything but black. But when you study the history of this country and what is true about African people from the continent of Africa and the Caribbean country of Haiti as an example, is that people came as whole human beings with all their intelligence, with all their knowledge, with all their confidence, with all their belief system. And yes, they beat it out of some people, they killed some people, but there were enough people who survived and maintained their Africanness for making a 2025. We still have some remnants, just the drippings of the Africanness. But because we tend to not have their public conversation, and if the conversation is happening in other spaces, I'm not aware of it, and I want somebody to tell me. And it's a genuine such conversations, I don't mind at least participate as an observer for hear what I say. UEF has been active in engaging the ISCR niche on African narratives. Now there's quite a bit of literature, and my newest book, and I want to thank everybody where I'd ask people to buy books for me, and then I'm willing to reimburse them. Some people take the reimbursement, some people don't. And for the people then where gift me with books, like my sister, Sonia Allen, this is one of the latest books she gifted me with. And this book, it means so much to me. The book is called The Defense of the Settlers of Honduras Against the Unjust and Unfounded Representations of Colonel George Arthur, late superintendent of that settlement, British Honduras citizens. And so, in I think that 1821, I checked the date when I got a break. There were a group of African people mixed with indigenous people from the Mosquito Shore who were brought to Belize. And the people, and this is for sure now, the awareness, the knowledge. Now, one lot of them people weren't literate. Majority of them weren't literate. But for sure how identifiable black people had knowledge, had the courage for advocate, for fight enough for their own interests. And so then group of people petitioned to be, like we shouldn't be enslaved people because even though you can't see it no more because of the mix-up, our people are indigenous people. And based on how the European, the enslaved people, you know, enslaved because they're not African people, and we tell us say, we are not African people. We got indigenous blood in a we. And so there's I mean, you hear the narrative over and over. But then as you read different books, you start to get the details. And that the juicy part where I like the details of their story. So again, looking back at the mix-up of people in Belize, and then the knowledge and the intelligence of people. At the point when we got political independence, these stories should have been a part of the collective storytelling of Belize about how the people who, again, always mentioning that, you know, this region where they accept that the Maya people were here first. No, there are other narratives because Christopher Columbus itself write in a diary and say, one time then coin in 1492, it described people where, black people, where they meet, and then there was at least one black person from Christopher Columbus boat when it come, so that they were black people. That's 1492, but the point is that there are documentation of African people, and then use the Olmec head as an example, who are forerunner to the Maya people as indigenous people in this region, that black people were there first. Anyways, for the sake of this conversation, when I said the Maya people mean at this region first, and then you have enforced labor for the most part, African people being here. So the mix-up of people, and to be very clear, when it comes to Belize tongue, if I'm not mistaken, I never noticed. I never bring one out of my books today because of the protest, so I can't move it and all that things. But I never knew that, never till 1943, I think, that Belize tongue became known as Belize City. My dad would have been like 3 years old at the time. And so, because we don't know for we stories, we don't have one appreciation for we self as black people. The more you know about yourself, the more you know about your people, the more you know how you come for be, it ought to inspire you to hold your back up and hold your head up, because who are your people? And you really have one duty for carry yourself like the people that we come from the continent of Africa. Now, a lot has changed. There's some things we don't want to do what people was doing in the past. But because we don't know for we story as African people of Belize, and the state, remember, the state never designed for tell we who we, for we know, for we value, that in a 2025, the government of Belize still not done nothing for make the violation of black people stop. So the fact that you're here to get police consistently in spaces of employment and in classrooms, that is wrong. And I really, we're going to break, but I really want to call, because I don't want to talk. 2805848. We're going to take one break, and we're going to come back. But if you're not call, I want to talk for the next hour about black people that Belize, and the campaign that UEF has going on for the government of Belize to stop hair discrimination in Belize. Break time. Welcome back to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes for this morning, Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. The phone number to call is 280-5848, 280-5848. I have to calm myself down. I recognize I'm going to talk loud at the end of the last segment. I tend to get hype when I talk about African descendants racialized as black people, especially when it comes to the country of Belize. And the point I'm going to make is that, like right now, I'd say maybe in the past, 10 years, there's been a movement of natural hair as it relates to black people being accepted, promoted, like in the 60s and 70s, was African people, the natural hair, dashiki, black consciousness. And so I feel that the time is right to get buy-in from the community to say that your hair or even the clothes we wear have nothing to do with how you learn or the work that you perform. Morning, thanks for calling WB.
Good morning, Sister YaYa. Blessed love. How you doing today?
I wake up and I move, talk to you.
Okay, yes. You're talking about blackness today, right? So, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I heard you talk about this Igbo town in Belize City, right? I listened to you to get historic stuff about Belize because I really don't know about Belize history because I was born in America and went to Belize at the age of 13. And they embedded that book with the Arawaks and the Indians. But anyway, about the Igbo tribe, when I went to college, when you look at West Nigeria, that's where the Igbo town people come from, which is the Garifuna people, right? And so, from my understanding, Igbo town is a town for Creole people, because Igbo town is really from West Nigeria, which is the Garifuna. So why would they name that place Igbo town at that particular time? That's my question.
Okay. To my understanding, African people came from majority to the west coast of the continent of Africa. And the Igbo group of people and the Akan group of people had large numbers of Belize. Belize town, now known as Belize City, south side. So the areas where the boundaries of what they call Igbo town, because they say it used to be large yards, like the yard are big, and they have like what I call shotgun houses, where enslaved people lived, and later after 1838, them still live there. And so that area like from Yabra Cemetery all the way to South Street, from some sources say from Regent Street to the Canal side. But that's because there was such a large amount of people from the continent of Africa who identified as Igbo people, for example, why it was called Igbo town. Garifuna people, for the most part, do not lead with their Africanness, even though for the most part, when you look upon them, they can't deny that they're African people. They lead with their indigenousness. So you don't hear them beat the drum that we the African, we the black people. The organization that represent them has been known to say that we were never enslaved people. But the records show that when enslaved African, whichever narrative you want to believe, were on a ship, boat, being brought against their will, they mutinied, but in that process, they were in enslavement status. Now, indeed, some of them, most of them, never work as far as free labor on a particular land. These are the ancestral Garifuna people, African descendants. So even if they mutinied and then the majority of them come off the St. Vincent, they were still in enslavement status when they bring them from the continent of Africa. And then you had enslaved people who run away from surrounding islands. That's why Garifuna people look African, because that's who their ancestors and ancestors. Yes, they did mate with the Kalinago people, and that's where they claim the indigenous from. But they don't lead with their Africanness. They're quick to tell you they were never enslaved, but that's what they want to say, their business. I know they're not black people.
Because I'm African American, I'm American, but I believe I'm a Creole. I grew up in Dungrega, right? So most of my friends and peeps are ref, my soccer players, so I'm tied in with them. So sometimes we have a debate, sometimes you get influence. This word yo come into play, a mixture of, like I said, I'm American, so one of the buddies, you learn certain phrases, or you got yo. I'm like, what is a yo? You know what I'm saying? Oh, I mixed with the white man, or so I said, well, I guess from my understanding in books, you got yo too, because you mixed too. You ain't 100% African. I could debate, like you debate, right? So they get stuck when it comes to that phrase. So I said, you got a black yo. You know what I'm saying? Because you mix, you're not mixture. You ain't full-blooded, homeboy. The Caribbean Sea. The Arawaks and the Indians, that's the only thing they taught us in school back in those days in buildings when I went to buildings. I went to buildings in the 80s and everything. And the first book I learned about was the Arawaks and the Indians and the Caribs and everything. I learned nothing about buildings and everything. Did they change the history book in buildings?
What did you say?
Did they change the history book in buildings?
Did they change
the
what?
book I learned about was...
They have a course called Belizean Studies that have more about Belize as far as different ethnicities than they did, let's say, in the 70s. But it's still very steeped in a colonial narrative. I could say it because I was a part of the working group, and me and the other 3 people left, who were very focused on African and indigenous Maya stories. So the Belizean stories is still my take is that because of what St. John's College did with Maya and African studies at a high school level, the state figured they had to answer that before that get too saturated in the people in mind. And then they come up with Belizean studies, which are just a watered down version, but still very colonial in the teaching of the truth of this country. Because if that is never the case, then more African students racialized as black children, for example, would have known their story. So that derogatory term where you said it was call you, and then there are 2 identifiable group of African people, Garifuna, Creole people. You can't tell the difference other than maybe their names sometimes, because coming from Honduras, then I have more what we would say Spanish names, and we would have English names. But with the African people, with the kinfolk, you can't run from that. But that because we don't know ourselves.
You know what, sis? Like I said before, with the beauties of the Crochet, one of the better schools in the area, Crochet Junior High, so with the beauties. And in America, we had a little bit of Creole and Gariffa and everything. I had a friend who, in junior high, he was an honest student. I never knew he was Gariffa. I went to his house. He was 13 in America. I was speaking African. But anyway, besides that, when I went to Belize, started dating and everything in Belize, this is the first time I ever experienced black racism, you know what I'm saying? Because like in America, you could be purple, green, yellow, mild, blue, whatever kind of color. We're going to date you, you know what I'm saying? But over there, I was brought up into racism and stuff. Oh, they did she because she the blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? What? She's a pretty black girl. What that has to do with me liking her and everything? So it kind of woke me up when I went over there, but, that racism is dying off over there. That was the old ancestors, trying to bring it up to the new generation, people in the village, the rest of the people down there, they're doing something or bad vibes, but it's transgressing on, and everybody's just getting along and migrating and moving, so it's getting a little better down there as far as the racism, but it still has that black power with the Corinthians. Or stick with your race, or stick with your own kind and everything. Same thing in the Creole atmosphere too. Stick with your kind, you know what I'm saying? Because I see it every day going there. It's been brought to my attention. But anyway, sis, you have a good day today. Bless.
Thanks for the reasoning, brother. And people have the choice to choose who they want to partner with. I just don't know if people who, and it's not unique to say that people want to partner with their own people. That are not more unique. So I find, Chinese people, they're Chinese people. Indian people, they're with Indian people. Sometimes even based on religious grounds. Muslim people wanted Muslim people for the most part, because people understand the value of keeping their culture, heritage, identity intact. So one of the things that, and I know it might seem like we're all over the place this morning, because I had to listen to myself, but the bottom line is that in Belize, African descendants racialized as black people, for the most part, the state has not taken the responsibility to tell the truth about us to us. And so then go with the singular narrative, for example, one Creole, now one mixture of African and British. When, and I never know I'll have this conversation. And I don't know all I by heart. That's why I have my books there with me, because I could go to the book there and cite the sources. That the word Creole was originally a Spanish word, and it meant European people who were born outside of the continent or where their ancestors and ancestresses come from. And the same thing for African people. Creole meaning that you never born from the continent of Africa. And I take it make my business. I'll have to produce this literature, because that's another thing. The people that want to contact me, especially in the Caribbean, when they go up online and research for black people that Belize, we show up consistently about the Garifuna people. So anytime they contact me about black people, they only talk about the Garifuna people. They don't talk about the Creole people, because the Creole people, for the most part, not known for the serious research and then have it published or produced in any way, so that if people go up online, search for a journal, go down an archive, they could find stuff written. There is stuff online that I know they say there isn't anything, but for the most part, when people go look for black people at Belize, the stories or literature by Garifuna about Garifuna. So people know, like the Creole people ain't dip on the radar, at least the people that will contact me. So I know that that needs to be done. And so when it comes to, again, I identify as a spirit having an African woman experience in this realm. So both the Creole people and the Garifuna people, I identify as Mrs. Tambredakas and identifiable African people. I'm for show you the failure of the system, the failure in the system to ensure that people don't know themselves, because once they don't know yourself, other people define you, and then you could control people. But secondly, when it comes to our miseducation or program education, literacy is an issue and has been an issue for years in this country. And so when X bring up, I think, is it Caden Stewart, is a young brother, I think 16-year-old student from Edward P. York who drowned this past weekend, and just exemplary black youth. Like that's another image often what we think, but when we think of black youth, because that's what the media they show over and over again of black youths in Belize. They're not like this youth, and they take one tragic experience like this, so this youth come to a lot of awareness. There are others out there, we just don't know about it. And so we really have to, that's why telling our stories are so absolutely important. I don't know how long I did this work for a while, but I just want to share with Belizean people that the numbers not add up for people say that the people who call themselves Creole people, African descendants for sure, based on how they present. In 1861, 62, when I tell you the indigenous people are in 90-something and they apply for their liberation because they say we are not African people, so you shouldn't enslave we. They eventually lose the law, the legal argument, but they eventually get their freedom. But at that time, I'm sorry, that was 1821, 1822. That these they came from the Mosquito Shore based on the 1786 Convention of London. And in that Convention of London, if I'm not mistaken, we say, you can't have no government, or you can't have no agriculture. So that's the primary reason why, because of the dispute with this being Spanish territory, why we don't have one history of agriculture, because the Convention of London distinctly say, you can't have that. But by the way, more than likely, I want there for the whole month of April, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, sitting in for Most High, and there'll be times when, if you can hear and join me. So, no say we don't hear a lot of black people in the month of April. With cited sources. The number is 280-5848, and you can always call and change the conversation. 280-5848. So, in 1821, there were listen to the numbers. 150 British settlers, 900 free Africans, they have free blacks, and 3,000 enslaved people. So there's no way with that kind of numbers there that the majority of the offspring could say that they mix up with British and African solely. I just said that about 1821. So based on the numbers and depending on the time frame, the math ain't mathing. Now I gonna take it my business to go find out where African and African descendants come from, where they come from specifically at different time period. And I'm just telling you some of the sources. So for the people that want to say they're not Creole people, you could do a DNA and it tell you your bloodline. Most of our working class people, it don't happen. I was telling you generally at different time frame where African descendants racialized as black people, how they end up here. So you could stop that lie, but one Creole, that one British, and one African mix. But it worked for the system, so they keep telling the lie. So you know one of the sources there where I have, it says African people come from a number of sources. So you have British kidnap and human traffic Africans from Africa to Jamaica or to Bermuda, and then Conda, Belize. So it says about this period, 1718, Negro laborers were first introduced from the islands of Jamaica and Bermuda. That's from Free Your Mind with Aondo Iyo. So about 1718, Jamaica and Bermuda. There's no evidence that Africans were brought by force directly from the continent of Africa to Belize. There was usually some place else and then they end up at Belize. So that's one source, right? From the continent to Jamaica, Bermuda, then Conda, Belize. One other source, other Africans were brought to Belize as free men when they were disbanded from the West India regiments early in the 1800s. So disbanded, enslaved, no, these wouldn't have been enslaved Africans. These would have been Africans who served in the West India regiment. So these would not have been enslaved Africans. And this is the early 1800s. That are two sources. And then Africans from Spanish enslaved ships were brought to Belize at the time of emancipation in 1838. Third source. Remember, I just look for where African people come from and end up the Belize. So that's a third source. You have Garifuna, or what they would call the Black Caribs, were not enumerated in the first census. So, and these would be mostly enslaved Africans from the Windward Islands, like Barbados. And that in the 1861 census, it had 1,825, well, the word they have is Carib, but it would be Garifuna people who are offspring of enslaved African and the Kalinago people. So that's our fourth source of where identifiable black people, how they end up that Belize. Fifth source, Confederate settlements, well, this is the name of the book, Confederate Settlements in British Honduras, Donald C. Simmons Jr. So we're talking about after the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, they intentionally recruit European people for Conda, Belize, and they go on their racist ideas, and we think what they're doing in the southern United States, they could happen in Belize, but when they Confederates Conda, Belize, some of them bring the enslaved African people with them. Fifth source. Then we have, I mentioned this earlier, Nathaniel Millett. We've had him twice as guest on Sunday Review over the years. There's an article, Law, Lineage, Gender, and the Lives of Enslaved Indigenous People on the Edge of the 19th Century Caribbean. And this is where, in 1821, more than 90 enslaved men, women, and children approached the British superintendent of Belize and claimed their freedom based on indigenous ancestry. The superintendent took their claims seriously and created a board of commissioners to investigate the matter. So that one, they had different, these are from the Mosquito Shore, and so they're indigenous people, and they had different groups of indigenous people. So you had, for example, the Tawira mosquito, concentrated in the south and identifying as indigenous descended. The Samba mosquitoes identifying as African indigenous and based primarily in the north. So they would have been the, identifiable African. So this would be the sixth source of African descendants specialized as black people that believes. Remember the phone number at 280-5848. Remember the call, so I have to talk. The seventh source, Creole, Africans born in Belize. I have one quote in 1920 where Governor Hudson comments, say, Hudson perceived that the weakness of Garvanism in Belize was founding on the fact that the local Creoles objected to being labeled as Negroes, a fact he described, quote, as pathetic as it was amusing, end quote. He went on to predict that the Garvey movement would die a natural death as the members, quote, are apparently still incapable of general cooperation and they impose little trust in each other. And so we have the Creole as in Africans who were born in Belize, because they tell them where they come from. So when then they are one number of them by force or by consent, have sex, have offsprings, and the one they were born here, that Belize, I have to look for the time frame and say when they started calling Creole, because based on the census, you would have had people who didn't like Will Congo. It's not known for sure if somebody named Will Congo or Bikara person from the Congo region on the continent of Africa, but it's a logical guess. The eighth source, how African people, black people, end up the Belize. The largest number of enslaved Africans seem to have been the Igbos, as one section on the south side of Belize town was called Igbo Town. You also had the Ashantis, the Mongolians, and the Mandingos. 1790 names of enslaved Africans in the census: Congo Will, Angola Will, Guinea Sam, Igbo Jack, Mangola Sam, Mandingo Pope, and Cameroon Tom. The enslaved population always greatly outnumbered that of the European plantation. However, after 1783, the enslaved population decreased due to the following factors. Anyways, I'm not going into the following factors. Right now, I have another minute before I go on to number 9. At a site for Belizean people, where we could stop the lie, the myth, about one Creole person that one mixture of British and African. And I share with you as much as I could find, and I always look for we people in the pages of literature. That really fueled me for find African people, African descendants specialized as black people, for we people, that a wealth of where we come from. And tell you this one and then we're going to break. Number 9, in August 1836, Major Anderson, the acting superintendent, reported the arrival of 256 liberated Africans from Havana. That's 1836, from Havana, Cuba. And the one more, then it'll be 8:30. And number 10, of course I'm going to finish after the break, so I don't think I'm done. In December 1836, Africans destined for Cuba on a Portuguese enslaver were landed. So the one before this was in August 1836, and that was 256 liberated Africans from Havana, Cuba. And then in December 1836, there were 203 Africans destined for Cuba on a Portuguese enslaver were landed. So I don't give you 10 sources. And you can always text me 671-8050. I could tell you no part I get the sources, where I get the information from, book, page, and so it's very important that you cite your sources when you have the opportunity to. But it's time for break. Stay tuned when I come back.
In Belize, we value
Welcome back to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes on April 1st, Tuesday morning. The phone number to call is 280-5848. I start off, the talk soft, and then the more I talk about African people, my voice to get louder. I'm naturally loud. I really the work part, not talk so hard. Especially when you have one mic on, it could sound like you're holler on the burn and you're hollering at the ears. So I work on it. So far I give 10 different spaces where African descendants specialized as Black people come from. African descendants. I think the elder Dr. John Henry Clark, I think, my professor, I'd be disappointed for here, I forget the definition, but it tell you how people identify. And one part of people identifying who they are is that they identify with one landmass. So if you have somebody that's French, think about France. If you have somebody that's Spaniard, you might think about Spain. If you have somebody that's British, you might think about England. And I read somewhere that I'm African by, well, I never heard this is how they say it, but this is how I contextualize it for myself. The Creator make me African and Columbus make me Belizean. And so to understand that your nationality tell you what part you're physically born or you get naturalized. And at the time of political independence, there was no meaningful coming together of people and actually listening to people to understand what would be a Belizean identity. So even though we said Belizean, just like it was before we had political independence, people are grouped based on ethnicities, and then whatever the value system based on that ethnicity, how they would identify. I identify as a spirit having an African woman experience. I claim the whole continent of Africa and everything good and bad will go along with it. This is where I am at this moment because they bring me African people, and so not because they left the continent of Africa, and this is another thing, one thing I get in a European gallop. To the UN system, this is to the best of my knowledge, when they talk about indigenousness, they're not talking about indigeneity. Indigeneity meaning that when our African people who are maybe from the Ashanti people or the Igbo people, when they force them and bring them here, they never give up their identity. Then they still have their identity. So how Maya people hold on to the indigenousness, they don't let that go. Then why would we let it go? But one lot of we, and again, because of the system, let it go. No one nothing to do with the African side of we, like African spirituality. No. We want organized religion, though. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, nothing to do with the African spirituality. But that's what some always say. We still have, and when we think, and that's why it hurt me when people make joke or use the word obia for commercial purposes, that the African spirituality, that is sacred. So even though when we think about obia Belize, one number we tend to think about Garifuna people, but the so-called Creole people, obia are very much one part of their lifestyle and daily lifestyle, that the African spirituality. So when, say, some brothers and sisters, when they drink alcohol, they might take the alcohol and pour it on the ground and remember somebody will cross over into the spirit world. That's one African trait. When you have wake, that's one African trait. So there's literature research done about the African essences, African value system, African ways of being in Belize that you're still having in the culture. Sad to say, I grew up in the 70s. And at that time, Black people that Belize, because I grew up in Belize City, Black people that Belize talk Creole, but talking a Creole proverb, which is high level of communication. I remember a lot of the Creole proverbs, but if I listen to like X and Mose, then like two people were really, and I would say that because experience and live for long, and so they still talking at the Creole proverbs, so that it becomes second nature today. That's something where we lose. Give thanks we still have the Creole language, and that's why I insist for talking it. And I know they say that we shouldn't learn the English language. Yeah, we should learn it. The school have a responsibility for teach we, because English is not for we first language. Creole is for most Belizean. So teach the we as English as a second language learner. That one different mindset. And I'll have to stretch talking. I hope before the month of I intend to have somebody in for talk about literacy that Belize, because we'll go back to what happened to black youths. How come we don't have one lot of example? I believe his name is Caden Stewart. I hope I not said it wrongly. The youth who drunk, but stellar student. One of what they call the elite student from Edward P. York. Like that the history of African people. Caden Stewart, yes, handsome youth. Thank you, Christy, for showing his image. And you don't often hear one school administrator, one school leader talk about a student like, it's sad that this is a way take for make this brother come on the radar, and deepest condolences to his family. It's not natural for, like, it really not natural for have to bury your youth. What would be natural is for you to bury an elder, like your parents or your grandparents, but not to have to bury a young person. So just tragic. So no, I see my glasses drop, but I write big enough I have to say where I write just so. I'm done giving a 10, right? Different places where African descendants racialized as black people come to this era we know as Belize City. And then it says, even after African emancipation in 1838, Africans came to Belize in 1861, 1871, and 1881. That 23 years, 33 years, 43 years after legal chattel enslavement of African people ended in Belize. 1861, 1871, 1881 of African people and African descendants. So that's the number 11. Number 12. Sometimes I get confused. Jamaicans to Belize. This is late 1800s, early 1900s. In 1888, 100 Jamaicans recruited in the British Honduras Constabulary Force at the 1888. 1888 to 1889, Jamaicans sent back to Jamaica 5 or 6 years later. And so also I have another source that says Black and East Indian recruits came from Jamaica. That's source number 12. Number 13, Barbudan laborers brought to Belize in March 1865. March 1865, Barbadian laborers brought to Belize. Number 13. Number 14, we have, let's see, 1826 census. 1,034 troops of Her Majesty's Service, HMS. 102 listed as white, 189 as colored, so that means that the African mixed with something else. Could be British, but it could be anything else. Colored, and 743 as black African people. That's the 1826, 1,034 troops of Her Majesty's Service. That's a 14. 15. What is number 15? The formation of a colonial society. Okay, this number 15 said, I have to squint my eye because my glasses drop. 15 said that in 1730, and this is the one quote from Guatemalan Gazette of 1730, was said that some Spaniards made cross the New River, and then as prisoners, this is what the Spaniards then do, then capture 17 Englishmen and an English woman with her daughter, and 16 Negroes and 4 Negresses. Now, I don't know what part they come from, but the fact that they made for make them could capture them and carry them, they come from somewhere. And I tell you, anytime I read, I primarily look for my African people. And when I tell you I look for them, I get still, I pray to the Creator, to our African ancestresses and ancestors, and I tell them, "Wanna help me. I look for you. I want to know what happened to you. You could show up in my dreams, or you could lead me to the book or to the article or to the conversation. I could document that I find you. If I could find a name when I pour libation, I want to call on a name. If I can't find you by name, I want to remember you by whatever the incident is that I find. This is my purpose. This is what the Creator make me for do. That for Belize, well, after I'm in foreign, get deported, and find for we people there. And not for we people there. So that's what I tell people when they say, "Yeah, why do you they protest by yourself?" And I tell them, I know the Ocha by myself. And a real talk. Our African ancestresses and ancestors are here with me. They're real. And I know they're real until our mother, Jean Marin, crossed over into the spirit realm. I come from his stomach, he back me for 9 months. That's the closest thing to our ancestress for me. And so because she's my strongest person in the spirit world, until she crossed over June 2nd, 2022, I never get a sense of how strong that link is between us, the living, and the spirit world. And when I tell you might not believe it, but when I tell you even in the spirit world, our mother defends me, protects me, communicates with me, discipline with me, real talk. And so I am driven when it comes to African people, African descendants, anywhere in the world, for the liberation of we people. It is absolutely real. So that number 15. I don't know if I'm finished today, you know. And I just skip this book, right? And I read, but at least I know I write on the book, African people to Belize, because I got a lot of books where I write in now. Sometimes I can't find anything when I write. So I just, I find with people, and tomorrow I'm telling you about, tomorrow I'm telling you some more about this book what my sister Sonia Allen sent for me. Because I find some of the people, I mean, my heart get heavy when I find with people and I see where I've gone through right at Belize. And one of the reasons why I love Southside Belize. Southside Belize City, that's sacred territory for African descendants racialized as black people. Southside Belize City. That's why I love Southside Belize City. But I find one story about people and I can't tell you the last time I find something, but my heart will get heavy. And I have to take one break. But I can't remember before last week when I get this book, when I could tell you I sit down and I cry when I read one story about what happened to free people there. But we'll come back to that tomorrow for that. We could go to a break and then on the soon enough call in right to the talk. And yes, 45 minutes. My mouth they had me. Break time.
Take a deep breath.
Welcome back to Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes for All Fools Day, April 1st, 2025. Now almost time to shut the shop. We talked about a lot of things this morning. Very much centered on African descendants, racialized as black people, historically in Belize, connections. Oh, final call for the morning. Morning, talk to me. I got like 3 minutes.
Thank you for the show. Everybody listen. I might not know what to say, but they listen.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot to me. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day.
One love. Like, I don't know if you don't have any idea how hard it is when you're the only person behind this desk and people know the call. And they're not, for some people, this conversation get exhausting. They don't really want to hear it. But this is the last call this morning. Carla, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Good morning, Sister YaYa. It's a very wonderful interested conversation and topic you are speaking up, and I'm very applaud and very glad and grateful for being listening to this information that you have been giving us, and it's so sad that we haven't get this information in school. And just to speak up, I only went to Channel 6, so I was unfortunate in getting all my education at a young age. I'm 9 years old, so it's good to be receiving this information. But you have been a wonderful thing, wonderful job. Keep it up, man, and you are just helping us who haven't get this information so that we could have a wider knowledge of what's going on and where we come from and who are our people and stuff like that. So, sister, continue the good work, man, and you are giving me some information that is very vital for my knowledge of both help my children and to help others who is in my year. I'm a drummer. I like to play drums, so I know something deep with the Creole and the guys who not to send me a me. I know I think I got to name me African, whatever. But we never get much teaching when we're young at the school, in the primary school, to give us that wide knowledge of aspect. But it's wonderful that you're sharing with us now. So it's never too old to learn. This avenue is very intellectual to us, and just continue the work. I like him to come every day. You know me, I know you. And I have a long career of Rebecca Martin, Bradley Village now. So continue, man. I hope and blessing, man. And God will do a good thing to you and to make people get this information. So have a blessed day, and I'll continue listening as usual.
Thanks, brother. I don't know why I cried this morning. I don't know, have like no idea how much it means to me that I know under the listen. I don't know, appreciate it. I want to tell me that for now because I don't know that I'm to wait for those every morning. I know I have one African descendants racialized as black people segment because I read a lot. I have conversations with other people who are no different than me and more than me. But then you don't know how much you actually retain or remember to be able to share. And that's why I would bring all the books now with me because the books that my best is and I could just read through the book and tell you know. So since I know I don't have one interest, I want to finish off tomorrow with the other sources where African descendants racialized as black people come from. I want to tell you this story. We make a cry last week from this book my sister sent for me last week about African descendants racialized as black people. And I'm saying that really the state have one duty to tell these stories. But in the absence of the state telling these stories, and make it be clear, me just to carry the baton. Because they are Mandela newspaper. It's going to be 56 years on August 13th, 2025. That way, a Mandela bill pan. In 1969, when under colonial rule, there was an, anyways, make a stop. That time we go. The security guard was Robert, no. Now what I first name? Roger Rushford, better known as rapper. You have a rapper name? Roger Rushford. The security guard will not come in this morning. Shane Flowers is the security guard now. The master chief operator is Christy Flowers. Harlan in a studio with camera, so you must say, I take my picture, I know I like the picture take. So Christy Flowers is the master chief operator. Give thanks, Christy, for all your support. Christy has been a lifeline sister to me. And we have Cliff Lewis. Brother Cliff, Senior. This is our intergenerational crew back at Zinc Fence, the XTV. Who's the engineer here. And we couldn't do this without the community. Like, I had to tell them, I only could do what I do because of the support of the Belizean people at home and in the Belizean diaspora. And I don't take Uno for granted. I truly, truly value Uno, appreciate Uno, could take discipline from Uno. This show will repeat at 3:30, but we can just give you this before I go. One of my sisters called me yesterday and I said, son talking, I tell her, Belizean people can make you laugh. Belizean people can make you laugh. They said they had some conversation, I get a story yesterday, some conversation on Facebook about, I don't know if they were Belizeans who voted in the US elections, or I don't know if they never met for vote, but in one of the comments somebody said, yeah. I tell her I think sweet. You don't think that people don't remember anything, but they know for remember it, for bring it up one time, it's contextual. And I had to laugh when the person told me. I could laugh at myself. That's true. I admit to the 2 felony charges, being that claiming I was a U.S. citizen, which I wasn't, and voting in elections in the United States, which I should have done. And whenever the state find me, that me self-admit to the state, eventually was deported from the United States, and so I'm gonna make good choices. I'm going to protest front Ministry of Education headquarters on North Front Street without a permit because the state chooses to not give me one. But health and strength, I should be back here tomorrow morning and for the rest of the month of April, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, sitting in for Brother Most High. Until then, only the people want to save the people.